For millennia, a truth has been hidden in plain sight. It is older than the oldest stone temples, deeper than the roots of the first human language, and yet it has been whispered from age to age through symbols, myths, and the flicker of firelight upon stone walls. The name that carries this truth is Thoth, not merely the Egyptian god of wisdom, not merely the ibis-headed scribe carved into the granite halls of antiquity, but something far greater. Thoth is a cipher, a key, a living bridge between mortal perception and the eternal architecture of the cosmos. Before we venture further into the unknown, take a conscious breath. If you feel a resonance with this pursuit of knowledge, consider joining our community by liking this video and subscribing. It helps this knowledge find those who are ready to receive it. Now, silence the distractions of the outside world. Center your awareness. Let us begin the journey inward. The Egyptians called him Jehuti. The Greeks named him Hermes Trismegistus, thrice great, master of wisdom, master of worlds. But the truest story does not begin on the banks of the Nile, nor within the clay tablets of Sumer. It begins far beyond the constellations that map our night sky. The oldest mystery schools hinted that Thoth descended from a realm beyond the star fields, where consciousness itself is the primary substance of existence. In that higher domain, forms are woven directly from thought, and energy obeys the purest command of mind and spirit. He came, it is said, as part of the architect order, a lineage of luminous beings tasked with seeding young worlds with the codes of intelligent life. The ancient reliefs that depict him with a crescent moon crown are not mere art. They are memory markers of his cosmic origin, for the moon was seen as a symbol of reflective knowledge, the intermediary between the blazing truth of the sun and the mortal eye that cannot yet withstand its full light. Imagine the earth in its earliest epochs of human society. Tribes scattered, language embryonic, survival a constant struggle. Into this primal theater stepped a being whose mind could hold the structure of a galaxy, whose voice could turn vibrations into coherent forms, whose presence altered the local field of reality. Thoth's descent was not a fall from grace. It was a calculated act of incarnation, the deliberate folding of infinite consciousness into the narrow corridor of human perception, so that he could teach from within. In the myths of Khem, he emerges as the scribe of the gods, the measurer of time, the inventor of writing, the keeper of spells. But these are the exoteric masks, the public titles. The initiates of the House of Life, the hidden priesthood, knew him as something far more dangerous, the custodian of the first formula. This formula was not alchemical in the crude sense of turning lead into gold. It was the method by which thought turns into matter, by which awareness molds the clay of the physical dimension. Here lies the first forbidden knowledge. The universe is not a fixed creation, but a mutable, living matrix. The laws you think are immutable, gravity, time, the limits of matter, are simply agreements coded into the collective field of consciousness. Thoth's descent brought with it the knowledge of how to rewrite those agreements, and herein lies the danger. If humanity remembered that its reality is pliable, no power structure could control it. No priesthood, no king, no empire could hold dominion over a species that knows it is the author of its own physics. History remembers fragments of this truth. The Greeks Hermes, the Arabs Idris, the Enoch of Hebrew tradition, all are echoes of the same luminous mind. But the purest record rests in the oldest strata of the Egyptian temple walls, where Thoth is shown not merely recording the deeds of gods and men, but literally inscribing reality itself. The stylus in his hand is not inked with pigment, but with light. Even the ibis, his sacred animal, carries esoteric symbolism. Its long, curved beak mimics the arc of the crescent moon and the trajectory of the spiral. both symbols of cyclical creation. The ibis wades between worlds, land and water, much as Thoth waded between dimensions. These were not poetic associations for the ancient initiates. They were instructions, telling the adept to become amphibious in consciousness, to move freely between the dense and the subtle, between the visible and the unseen. But why would such a being take the risk of entering a primitive human form, subject to the pain, forgetfulness, and limitations of the flesh? Because the laws of the higher realms are precise. One cannot truly seed a consciousness from outside. It must be carried within the host species, encoded into their myths, their rituals, their very neurobiology. Thoth's descent was an act of embedding, planting the seeds of an advanced metaphysics into the fertile but unformed soil of human culture. And yet, from the moment of his arrival, forces of opposition stirred. For as soon as the spark of awakening touches a species, there will be those, both mortal and non-mortal, who see danger in that freedom. The ancient texts hint at a council of shadow, a coalition of cosmic and terrestrial powers who feared the destabilization that would come if humanity rose too quickly. These forces understood that control is most effective when invisible. To let humanity think it is free while binding it in unseen laws is the most elegant prison. Thus began the first concealment. The deeper operations of Thoth's teachings were encoded in layers of metaphor, accessible only to those with the initiatory key. The public saw in him a wise god of writing and measurement. The hidden few received the unvarnished formula for bending reality. This is where the threads of history and myth entwine so tightly that they appear as one. The historical Egypt we read about in textbooks is the faint afterimage of a far older, far stranger Egypt, a place where temples were resonance chambers, where sound sculpted stone, and where scribes recorded not just events, but the vibrational state of the world itself. In this Egypt, Thoth was not a figure of the past, but a living presence, moving between the priesthoods, guiding, teaching, correcting, disappearing for years to return with new knowledge from the far halls of the West, a phrase many believe to be a poetic code for another dimension entirely. In the silence of his temples, the truth could be spoken. The human mind is a microcosm of the universal mind. The patterns of the stars are mirrored in the neural pathways of thought. Every act of perception is an act of creation. This was the inheritance he intended for us. And this is the inheritance that has been stolen, distorted, and buried beneath millennia of control. The emerald tablets, those luminous, indestructible records, are perhaps the most enduring vessel of Thoth's knowledge. Legends say they are forged from a material not of earth, a crystalline alloy that cannot corrode, crack, or burn, preserving their inscriptions through all ages and cataclysms. The public image of the tablets, neat green stone slabs with mystical symbols, is a mere shadow of their true form. Initiates describe them as sheets of shimmering, living light, whose glyphs seem to shift and rearrange depending on the consciousness of the one who gazes upon them. Their verses, written in a rhythm of power, are more than poetic aphorisms. They are vibrational keys. Each line, when spoken aloud in the original tongue, resonates in the bones, altering brainwave patterns, unlocking dormant frequencies within the body. To read them is to be read by them, for they do not merely convey meaning, they awaken memory. In their exoteric form, the tablets speak of light and darkness, of the cycles of life and death, of the soul's ascent to higher realms. But the esoteric reading, the one reserved for the inner circles of initiates, reveals something far more radical: explicit instructions for mastering time, bending matter, and navigating the interdimensional corridors that weave through our reality. One passage, often dismissed as mystical metaphor, says, "In the silence of mind, find the stillness of space. In the stillness of space, walk beyond time." The uninitiated might take this as poetic meditation advice, but Thoth's adepts knew it was a literal operational command. The silence of mind refers to a precise neurological state where brainwave activity shifts into deep theta and gamma patterns simultaneously, a rare state achievable through specific breath ratios and harmonic tones. The stillness of space is not a place, but a vibrational equilibrium in the quantum field, a point where the fluctuations of matter cancel, allowing consciousness to step sideways out of the linear time stream. This is the first of many secrets the tablets hold. Time is not a river carrying us forward. It is a dimension we can navigate with skill. The perception of past, present, and future is a local illusion, maintained by collective agreement. When you break that agreement, through the methods Thoth recorded, you can access any moment as easily as stepping into a different room. This was the foundation of his so-called immortality. He did not live forever in a single body. He moved in and out of moments, sidestepping decay by never fully anchoring himself to one point in time for too long. Another often misread passage says, "In the form of the light I descended, in the form of the light I remain." Modern scholars take this to mean Thoth's spirit is pure and unchanging, but to the initiated it describes a process, the activation of the light body, the Merkaba, a rotating geometric field around the human form, shaped like interlocked tetrahedrons, capable of transporting consciousness, and, under certain conditions, the physical body, through space and dimension. The tablets outline how to spin this field at precise angular velocities, synchronizing it with stellar alignments to create a resonance corridor that opens into other worlds. Here lies one of the great reasons for suppression. Such knowledge, if public, would collapse the monopoly on travel, energy, and control that the ruling classes, both ancient and modern, cling to. Imagine a humanity no longer bound to roads, fuel, or passports, a humanity whose members can traverse worlds through their own minds and bodies. The encoded instructions are deliberate. In the tablets, Thoth weaves layers upon layers of meaning, ensuring that only those who have undergone the inner transformation necessary to wield such power could ever decode it fully. One must first master the disciplines of mental clarity, emotional neutrality, and precise intention, for without these, the techniques can backfire. An untrained mind stepping outside the familiar flow of time can become lost in loops or fractured across multiple realities. This is why, historically, the priesthoods kept the tablets locked away. Only the highest initiates were permitted to even gaze upon them, and even then, only after years of preparation. In Alexandria, it is whispered, a complete copy of the Emerald Tablets was kept in a sealed chamber beneath the library, not destroyed in the Great Fire, but removed before the flames, spirited away by an inner circle who swore to guard its contents. It is also said that the tablets themselves are self-protecting. In the wrong hands, their glyphs become meaningless, the letters dissolving into shapeless patterns. Only when the seeker's consciousness vibrates in harmonic resonance with the tablets do the true instructions appear. This resonance is not just moral purity, it is a technical frequency alignment of mind, body, and soul. Within the verses are also star maps, though not maps to the stars we see with the naked eye. These maps point to origin points, energetic nexuses in space-time that act as broadcast towers for reality itself. Thoth spoke of aligning the Merkaba with these cosmic signals to tune one's reality to a higher octave, shifting into worlds where decay, conflict, and limitation are far less dominant. Yet, this is not escapism. The tablets emphasize returning. To step into these higher harmonics is not to abandon this world, but to bring back the frequencies that can reshape it. This was Thoth's mission, and the mission he passes on to any who would follow in his path. Ascend to gather the tools, return to apply them. In the ancient world, this pattern was reflected in the initiation rites of the mystery schools. Candidates would symbolically die to the old world, undergo the ascent through the realms, often aided by plant sacraments or resonant sound, and then return to the body as a living bridge between the human and the divine. These were not metaphors. They were rehearsals for the real vibrational shift described in the Emerald Tablets. And here, perhaps, is the most unsettling suppressed truth. The tablets tell us we are not meant to remain fixed in one reality. Stagnation is death. The cycles of reincarnation, as most understand them, are a distortion, a trap. The original design, seeded by Thoth, was for the soul to spiral upward, each lifetime a step into higher realities, until physicality itself becomes optional. The notion of endlessly returning to this dense world was introduced later as a means of keeping the soul bound, harvesting its energy across lifetimes. To read the tablets with open eyes is to confront the magnitude of what has been stolen from humanity. We were never meant to be prisoners of time, matter, or the artificial boundaries of this single plane. Thoth left the key in plain sight, encoded in verses that can only unlock when the seeker is ready to remember what they truly are. The Atlantean Memory Vault, spoken of in hushed tones among the most secretive initiates, is not a poetic invention. It is the name given to the crystalline archive said to hold the unbroken memory of an entire civilization. Atlantis, the cradle where Thoth's most advanced knowledge was once an everyday reality. Unlike the fragmented relics of Egypt or Sumer, the Atlantean archive was designed to be indestructible, encoded not in books or stone, but in frequency and living crystal. It is not buried in one place, but scattered across the planet in hidden nodal points, each a keeper of part of the whole, waiting for the vibration of the seeker to match its own before revealing its contents. The story told by Thoth himself in the Emerald Tablets is clear. He was a king-priest of Atlantis, ruling in harmony with the law of one, a spiritual and scientific system where all beings recognize their interconnectedness. In this age, the manipulation of frequency was commonplace. The machines of Atlantis were not mechanical in the way we think of machines today. They were resonators, crystalline constructs that converted intention and sound into visible form. Healing, travel, communication, all were conducted through harmonics. Illness was understood as dissonance. Cure was the restoration of resonance. At the heart of this civilization was the Great Hall of Records, a vast chamber where every significant thought, invention, and discovery was imprinted into living crystal. This was the Memory Vault. The crystals, some the size of entire rooms, could be read by trained initiates who matched their own mental oscillations to the crystal's encoded frequency. The knowledge was not simply visual or verbal, it was experiential. The adept would feel the sensation of flying a craft, building a structure, or altering weather patterns, as though they themselves had lived it. But not all of Atlantis remained aligned with the law of one. Over centuries, a faction arose, the Sons of Belial, who sought to use the same frequency-based technologies for domination. They discovered that the same harmonics that could heal the human body could also control it, that the mind could be subtly influenced or even overridden by external vibration. It was here that the first great schism occurred and Thoth's warnings began. According to his own account, Thoth saw the catastrophe coming, not as prophecy, but as probability. Frequency technologies in the wrong hands would destabilize the planetary field. The very crystal network that sustained Atlantis would turn against it. amplifying destructive resonance until the continent itself could no longer hold. When the final days came, and the resonators sang their death song, Thoth gathered the most faithful of the priesthood and removed a portion of the memory vault to safe locations. Some crystals he buried beneath the sands that would one day become Egypt. Others he hid in chambers beneath the Yucatan, guarded by initiates who would later be remembered as the Maya. A few, it is whispered, lie deep beneath the waters of what is now the Mediterranean, unreachable without the precise harmonic keys to part the sea itself. The suppression of this knowledge began not after Atlantis' fall, but before it. The sons of Belial, aware that their use of the frequency devices would eventually destroy the continent, sought to ensure that no one could later restore the law of one. They seeded distortions into the public teachings, stripping them of their operational methods and leaving behind only symbols, vague allegories, and ceremonial gestures. By the time Atlantis sank beneath the waves, much of the surviving population no longer understood the true function of their own temples. This is why the great megaliths of later cultures seem mysterious to us. The stones of Giza, the stepped pyramids of Mesoamerica, the Cyclopean walls of Peru, all are echoes of a technology that once harnessed resonance to manipulate the structure of matter. Without the frequency keys, these structures are magnificent shells, the instruments without the song. Thoth, however, was determined to keep the song alive. The portion of the memory vault he rescued was hidden in such a way that it could not be found through force or greed. Each crystal's location was encoded in star maps, myths, and architectural alignments scattered across continents and generations. These were the breadcrumbs for the awakened, ensuring that only those whose consciousness could truly wield the knowledge would ever piece together the trail. One such trail lies in the constellations themselves. The alignment of Orion's belt with the pyramids of Giza is well known, but fewer realize that when viewed from specific coordinates in Central America, those same stars point directly to a submerged plateau in the Atlantic, the suspected remains of an Atlantean city. Another clue rests in the precession of the equinoxes. Every 26,000 years, the stars return to their original Atlantean alignments, opening energetic windows that make access to the vault possible. We are, Thoth implied, nearing the cusp of one such alignment now. And here we find the suppressed knowledge at its most dangerous. The Atlantean memory vault does not merely preserve the past, it can project it into the present. When an adept connects with the vault, they can reintroduce the lost harmonics into today's world. The technologies of free energy, instantaneous healing, and interdimensional travel are not inventions of the future. They are recoveries of the past. This is precisely why those who rule today's systems fear the vault's rediscovery. Entire empires rest on scarcity. To reveal abundance is to erase their power overnight. The myth of Atlantis is not a warning of human arrogance. It is a warning of what happens when divine knowledge is severed from divine responsibility. Thoth's work, in Egypt and beyond, was the continuation of a rescue mission, to hide the knowledge until humanity was ready to remember not just how to use it, but why. The fact that you are hearing these words now is not coincidence. We are approaching the same fork in the path where Atlantis once stood. Whether we repeat its fall or reclaim its ascent will depend on who unlocks the vault, and what they choose to do with what they find. The architecture of immortality is perhaps the most jealously guarded strand of Thoth's legacy, a living science of transcending death without severing the thread of consciousness. To the uninitiated, the myths of gods who live forever are fanciful stories, but to the adepts, these were coded manuals. Thoth's own existence across millennia, appearing in different cultures under different names yet always bearing the same wisdom, was not the trick of a myth-making priesthood. It was the demonstration of a perfected art. At the heart of this art lies the concept of the light body, known in ancient Chem as the Sahu, in esoteric Hebrew traditions as the glorified body, and in Thoth's own Atlantean lexicon as the Merkaba. The word breaks into three parts: Mer, light; Ka, spirit; and Ba, body or soul. Together, they describe a state where the spirit and body are encased in a radiant geometric field that vibrates at a frequency beyond decay. In such a state, the body is no longer bound by the cellular deterioration we call aging, and consciousness can pass between dimensions without losing its vessel. This is not immortality as an endless stretch of unbroken years in one physical form. That, Thoth warned, would become a prison. True immortality is mobility of being, the ability to inhabit form when needed, to dissolve it when not, to carry memory and identity without interruption. To build this light architecture, Thoth taught, the initiate must first re-engineer their inner temple, the human energy system. The spine, the breath, and the heart form the central axis. Through specific postures and controlled breath ratios, the electromagnetic field of the heart is expanded until it envelops the body in a luminous sphere. Sacred geometry is not merely symbolic here. The Merkaba is a precise interlocking of tetrahedral fields, spinning counter to one another at exact angular velocities. When the rotation reaches resonance with the surrounding cosmic field, the light body becomes self-sustaining. The Egyptians encoded fragments of this process into their funerary texts, which modern scholars mislabel as books of the dead. These were not guides for the deceased, but manuals for the living, maps for activating the light body before death so that the transition between realms was seamless. To die without the Merkaba activated was to risk fragmentation, the scattering of memory, and entrapment in the lower planes of the afterlife. To die with it was to step intact into the higher halls, free to return at will. One of the more startling suppressed truths is that the Great Pyramid itself was a tool for this activation. Its internal chambers, precisely angled shafts, and harmonic proportions were designed to induce the exact vibrational states necessary for the Merkaba's ignition. Thoth's priesthood would place the initiate in the king's chamber for a night of controlled sensory deprivation, resonance from tuned quartz rods, and guided mental imagery. By morning, the initiate would either emerge radiant or fail, requiring years of further preparation before attempting again. Thoth himself demonstrated the culmination of this process. Historical records, scattered and incomplete, suggest that he did not simply vanish from Egypt but withdrew into the light. The Emerald Tablets describe him stepping into the halls of Amenti, an interdimensional space beneath the earth accessed through vibrational keys. There, he claims to rest between missions, rejuvenating his form in fields of living light before returning to the surface world in a different era. Why would such knowledge be hidden? The answer is both practical and political. A population that can consciously exit and re-enter life cannot be ruled through fear of death. The entire machinery of control, religious coercion, political obedience, economic enslavement, depends on the mortal terror that life is fleeting and death is final. Remove that fear, and every chain falls away. Thus, throughout history, the principles of the light body have been fractured into unrelated pieces: yogic pranayama here, alchemical symbolism there, geometric diagrams scattered across cathedrals and mandalas. None of these fragments alone is enough to recreate the full architecture. Only within the inner sanctums of the mystery schools, often hidden behind multiple layers of oaths and trials, was the complete method preserved. Yet even fragments can awaken. Consider the widespread reports of near-death experiences where individuals describe moving through tunnels of light, feeling weightless, perceiving the interconnectedness of all things. These are spontaneous glimpses into the early stages of the Merkaba's activation. a process most never complete because they lack the conscious training to stabilize it. Thoth's teachings insist that immortality is not a gift, but a skill, earned through discipline, alignment, and the willingness to dissolve the false self. The ego, he warned, cannot ride the Merkaba. It must be left behind, for the light body will amplify whatever is within, carry greed or malice into the higher planes, and the results are catastrophic. This is why he insisted that the ethical foundation, living in harmony with the law of one, was inseparable from the technical procedure. Even today, whispers persist of individuals, hidden adepts, who have mastered this architecture. They do not flaunt their ability, for doing so would invite both worship and persecution. Instead, they work quietly, sometimes appearing in moments of great planetary need, their identities shifting over decades, as if untouched by time. The architecture of immortality, then, is not simply about extending life. It is about transcending the cycle of loss, fear, and amnesia that has bound humanity for ages. To walk this path is to reclaim the right to choose one's point of existence, to step in and out of the dream of matter at will, and to carry the torch of memory unbroken across the vast corridors of time. The suppression by the priesthoods did not happen in one sweeping act. It was a slow constriction, a tightening of the arteries of truth, until only the faintest pulse could reach the common people. In the earliest days after Thoth's departure into the halls of Amenti, the custodians of his teachings faced a choice: to guard the knowledge openly, allowing all who sought to enter the path, or to seal it behind layers of oaths, symbols, and ritual barriers. At first, the reasoning was noble. Not all could wield the power of Thoth's formulas responsibly. A mind untempered by discipline could easily distort reality in destructive ways. The priesthoods feared that if the masses discovered the operational methods for bending time, awakening the light body, or resonating with the Atlantean memory vault, chaos could erupt. So they wrapped the knowledge in metaphor, embedding it in myth and ceremony, accessible only to initiates. But power, once concentrated, has its own gravity. Over generations, the role of protector shifted into the role of controller. A caste of high priests arose, men and women who no longer lived by the law of one, but by the law of advantage. They discovered that the secrecy itself was a source of authority. By presenting themselves as the sole interpreters of divine will, they could dictate the terms of life, law, and even death for their societies. The suppression intensified after contact with foreign powers. Conquerors, seeing the potency of Egypt's mysteries, either sought to extract them for their own use or to destroy them outright. In both cases, the priesthood adapted by hiding more and more. The outer temples became theaters of devotion for the masses, where ritual gestures were performed without explanation, their true purpose long forgotten. The inner sanctuaries became vaults of guarded scrolls, coded texts, and oral traditions passed in whispers from master to chosen apprentice. One of the greatest acts of suppression was the rewriting of cosmology itself. Thoth's teachings placed consciousness as the prime creator, matter as the servant of mind. The priesthoods inverted this in the public doctrine, teaching that the gods, and by extension the priests who represented them, created reality for humanity, and that humans were powerless without divine favor. This subtle shift transformed a culture of co-creators into a culture of petitioners, kneeling before intermediaries who claimed to hold the keys to the divine. The ripple effects reached far beyond Egypt. In Greece, fragments of Thoth's knowledge reappeared in the mystery schools of Eleusis and Orphism, but were quickly appropriated by philosophical elites. In Rome, the Senate sanctioned certain cults while outlawing others, ensuring that the flow of esoteric knowledge could be managed to suit imperial stability. In the Abrahamic traditions, prophetic wisdom was often recorded in symbolic language so dense that only the initiated could decode it. Meanwhile, the literal interpretations became dogma for the masses. Perhaps the most devastating suppression occurred not through hiding the teachings, but through distorting them. Elements of the Merkaba practice were reframed as purely symbolic visions. The time-bending formulas of the Emerald Tablets were recast as moral allegories. The Atlantean technology of resonance was disguised as temple decorations with no functional purpose. The true power of these systems, direct access to the creative mechanisms of the universe, was effectively erased from collective memory. But not all suppression was human. Thoth's own accounts speak of the lords of the cycles, non-terrestrial overseers who regulate the pace of planetary evolution. These beings, operating from dimensions beyond human perception, sometimes acted as a brake on humanity's ascent, ensuring that the leap to higher knowledge would not destabilize the planetary field. While not inherently malevolent, their interests were not always aligned with human liberation. To them, the gradual awakening of humanity was preferable to sudden enlightenment, which could trigger planetary collapse if the collective consciousness was unprepared. Over time, a tacit alliance formed between these cosmic overseers and the ruling priesthoods. The former provided subtle energetic influences, shaping the background field of human thought, guiding or obscuring insight, while the latter maintained the social structures that kept the masses compliant. Together, they ensured that the deeper truths of Thoth's legacy remained the privilege of a select few. And yet, the suppression was never perfect. Symbols, myths, and rituals continued to leak fragments of the truth into the collective mind. The Ankh, with its loop and cross, still whispered of the key to life and the union of worlds. The Djed pillar still echoed the spinal activation required for the light body. The winged sun disk still hinted at the Merkaba's radiant form. Even in distortion, the seeds remained awaiting water. Thoth foresaw this cycle. In the Emerald Tablets, he speaks of returning when the time is right, and the balance of light and dark sways toward the light once more. His prophecies suggest that suppression has an expiration date, that when humanity reaches a certain vibrational threshold, the veils will thin regardless of the will of priesthoods or overseers. At that moment, the knowledge will flood back, not in temples or scrolls, but directly into the minds of those prepared to receive it. We stand now in the shadow of that threshold. The same technologies of control, mass distraction, fear-based governance, distortion of sacred truths are still in place, yet cracks have formed. Ancient symbols reappear in art, dreams, and spontaneous visions. Ordinary people report awakenings, sudden insights, and unexplained memories of lifetimes in civilizations long gone. The veils are fraying, and the hidden custodians know it. It is no longer enough for them to hide the truth. They must convince you that it is irrelevant, or dangerous, or imaginary. This final layer of suppression is psychological, to make you doubt your own resonance with the ancient truths when they surface. But once you recognize the pattern, their hold weakens. The architecture of control depends on your belief in its necessity. Withdraw that belief, and the structure begins to collapse. This is why Thoth's true students have always worked quietly, invisibly through the ages, passing the flame of remembrance from one to another, waiting for the day when secrecy will no longer be required. That day, as his prophecies foretell, is coming swiftly. Rituals of cosmic alignment were the practical heart of Thoth's living science. The operating procedures for opening the gates between worlds, tuning the human instrument to the harmonic currents of the cosmos, and bending the quantum field to the will of awakened intention. These rituals were not superstitious performances. They were precise energetic technologies, refined over ages, that combined sound, geometry, light, and consciousness into a single act. Every element of these rites served a purpose. The location was chosen for its resonance with specific ley lines, energetic arteries of the planet that carry and amplify subtle forces. The time was aligned with astronomical events, solstices, equinoxes, heliacal risings of key stars like Sirius, moments when cosmic influxes reached their peak. The tools, crystals, metals, carved symbols, were tuned to resonate with exact frequencies, and the practitioner's body was prepared through fasting, breath control, and mental purification to act as a stable vessel for the energies invoked. Thoth's emerald tablets speak of standing in the place of balance, where light and dark are one. A cryptic phrase that the initiates knew referred to the moment when the sun and moon's influence over the human biofield are in equilibrium. At such a point, often at dawn or dusk on specific dates, ritual actions could send ripples through the fabric of reality. One such action was the Chant of the 12, a sequence of harmonic tones that vibrated the pineal gland, the gateway to multidimensional perception. The pineal gland was central to these practices. In Thoth's teachings, it is the physical anchor of the Eye of Horus, capable of detecting frequencies beyond visible light and ordinary sound. When stimulated through sound and breath, it secretes a crystalline fluid that enhances the brain's ability to maintain coherence with higher dimensional input. This allowed the practitioner not only to perceive other realms, but to project intention directly into them, influencing outcomes in the physical world. The suppressed knowledge here is that ritual is not about worship, it is about engineering. The cosmic alignments are the switches in the great machine of reality. Just as an engineer waits for the right pressure, temperature, and current to initiate a process, the adept waits for the precise celestial and terrestrial conditions to perform the work. This is why Thoth's temples were not randomly placed. They were nodes in a planetary circuit. Giza, Abydos, Dendera, Edfu, each sat atop intersections of energy lines, each built to resonate with a specific cosmic harmonic. One of the most profound rituals was the crossing of the gate. Performed only at rare intervals when Sirius, Orion, and certain planets formed exact angles, this rite enabled the adept to shift their consciousness entirely into another plane and, in some cases, return with physical artifacts or information impossible to obtain otherwise. Thoth's priests recorded objects of unknown metallurgy, seeds that grew into plants unseen on Earth, and knowledge of medical procedures far beyond their era, all retrieved through such crossings. Sound was the primary vehicle in these rituals. Long before modern science proved the effects of frequency on matter, Thoth's initiates were shaping stone and altering physical states through resonance. The tones of opening could make dense material temporarily malleable, allowing monolithic blocks to be moved as if weightless. The same principle, applied to the human body, could dissolve energetic blockages, heal organs, and even reverse the effects of aging. Modern culture has been taught to think of such practices as myth because their precision has been lost. A chant without the correct pitch, duration, and emotional state is like a password with one wrong letter. It will not open the gate. The priesthoods ensured that while fragments of these rituals survived in folklore, the exact keys were withheld. Thus, what was once a powerful tool became an empty tradition, safe from misuse but also useless for liberation. Another critical element was the use of sacred herbs and elixirs, not for intoxication, but for fine-tuning the frequency of the body. Blue lotus, white cedar, and certain mineral-rich waters were prepared in exact proportions, often under moonlight or starlight, to imbue them with the targeted vibrational signature. Ingested at the right moment, they acted like catalysts, helping the practitioner's energy field lock on to the cosmic pattern. The danger, and the reason for suppression, was that these rituals could bypass the entire hierarchy of control. A skilled adept could manifest abundance without tribute, heal without the sanctioned healer, and receive knowledge without the permission of temple or state. If enough individuals performed them in synchrony, they could alter the collective field of humanity, shifting the direction of history itself. Thoth's vision was not of a few elite practitioners, but of a civilization where alignment with cosmic rhythms was as natural as breathing. Agriculture would be timed to stellar patterns for maximum yield. Governance would occur only on days of clear celestial harmony to ensure wise decisions. Healing would be a community act, performed under the full moon with synchronized breath and song. This was the rhythm of Atlantis before its fall, a society woven directly into the fabric of the cosmos. The tragedy is that such integration has been replaced by artificial rhythms, mechanical clocks, fiscal calendars, media cycles that keep humanity perpetually out of phase with the greater order. We eat, work, and sleep in patterns divorced from the cosmic tides, weakening our natural connection to the field. The rituals of cosmic alignment, if restored, would resynchronize humanity, making control by external forces almost impossible. Even now, some of these alignments can be observed and felt. The surge of energy at the solstice, the quiet hum of balance at the equinox, the electric intensity of a lunar eclipse, these are remnants of the great cosmic machinery still operating, still accessible to those who know how to step into its current. And though the complete formulas remain scattered, fragments are awakening in the collective mind. In dreams, visions, and sudden impulses, the old chants are returning. The gates are beginning to remember their names. The Great Pyramid as a resonance device is perhaps the most daring and controversial revelation within Thoth's forbidden corpus. The official narrative tells us it is a tomb, yet no pharaoh was ever found within. No funerary inscriptions grace its walls, no treasures were entombed in its chambers. To the initiate, these omissions are the loudest proof. It was never meant for death. It was built for life, for transformation, for the tuning of the human vessel to the frequencies of the cosmos. Thoth himself, in the Emerald Tablets, claims to have raised the mighty pyramid, patterned after the form of the Great Force. This great force was not merely a godly idea, it was a precise energy pattern drawn from the cosmic architecture itself. The pyramid's proportions encode the mathematical constants of the universe, P, F, and the ratios of celestial bodies. These are not aesthetic choices, they are harmonic keys. The shape and angles focus subtle energies the way a lens focuses light. Inside, the arrangement of chambers and passageways functions as a vast instrument. The king's chamber, lined with granite rich in quartz, is a resonator of immense power. When sound, whether from a human voice, a struck stone, or a tuned instrument, fills the space, the quartz crystals vibrate, producing a piezoelectric effect that converts mechanical energy into electromagnetic energy. In ritual, initiates would chant specific tones, their voices amplified and transformed by the chamber into waves that interacted with the energy fields of the body and the planet. The queen's chamber, often overlooked, was not for a queen at all. It was a tuning chamber, where subtle adjustments to the body's vibrational state were made before entering the higher frequency zone of the king's chamber. Narrow shafts, aligned with stars such as Sirius and Orion's belt, were not for ventilation, but for channeling stellar energy directly into the ritual space. This stellar influx was part of the resonance equation. blending Earth's energy with that of distant suns to open interdimensional corridors. The suppression of this knowledge was deliberate. To admit that the Great Pyramid was an energy device is to dismantle centuries of carefully curated history and to reveal that ancient civilizations possessed technologies not yet replicated by modern science. It is also to admit that human consciousness, not fuel, not machines, was the central driver of these devices. The pyramid did not work unless a living being, trained and attuned, stood within it as the activator. Esoterically, the pyramid was also a map of the human energy system. The subterranean chamber corresponds to the root chakra, the grounding into the material world. The queen's chamber resonates with the heart, the harmonization of body and soul. The king's chamber aligns with the crown, the gateway to higher consciousness. To ascend through the pyramid's spaces in ritual was to enact the ascent of the soul through the layers of being, culminating in direct contact with the divine field. The ancients called the pyramid the House of the Horizon, a phrase modern Egyptology interprets as a poetic name for a tomb. In truth, the horizon is where worlds meet, where the seen and unseen, the known and the unknown merge. The pyramid was a horizon in stone, a place where one could step beyond the limitations of ordinary space-time. Its placement on the Giza Plateau was no accident. The plateau sits at the crossing of major planetary energy lines, a nodal point where the Earth's geomagnetic field is unusually active. Beneath the pyramid runs a network of subterranean waterways. When these waters flow, they create piezoelectric currents in the bedrock, further amplifying the energies in the structure above. This combination of earth energy, water flow, stellar alignment, and geometric precision made the pyramid a perfect resonance device. The rituals within were not for spectacle, they were for profound transformation. An initiate would undergo days of fasting and sensory purification before entering. Lying in the granite sarcophagus of the king's chamber, not a coffin but a resonance chamber, the initiate would be bathed in a symphony of frequencies. Chants from hidden acolytes, the hum of the earth's own vibration, and the cosmic tones channeled through the shafts would merge, producing an altered state in which the boundaries of self dissolved. In this state, the Merkaba could be activated, time could be navigated, and the soul could travel freely between dimensions. This is the secret that the priesthoods and modern powers alike have kept buried. The Great Pyramid is not a relic of a dead past. It is still functional. Its harmonics still respond to sound and consciousness. But without the precise keys, the chants, the star timings, the mental disciplines, it remains dormant, a sleeping giant of stone. In recent decades, researchers experimenting with sound inside the pyramid have recorded inexplicable phenomena. Tones sustained far longer than physical acoustics should allow. Sudden shifts in temperature and sensations of timelessness among participants. These are the faint echoes of what the structure can do when fully awakened. Thoth's warning, however, is clear. Power without alignment is perilous. The pyramid magnifies whatever is placed within it. A mind clouded with fear or greed would find those qualities amplified to dangerous extremes. This is why its true use was restricted to those who had undergone years of inner purification. The resonance device is both a doorway and a mirror. It will not lie about what it finds within you. The official narrative will tell you it is a tomb, because that is the safest story. But the stones remember, and those who walk its corridors with the right awareness can still feel the hum beneath their feet, the breath of the ancient force that built it, waiting for the moment when humanity is ready to tune itself once more to the music of the stars. The return of the scribe is the final thread in Thoth's tapestry, a prophecy woven through every fragment of his surviving words, etched into the emerald tablets, whispered in the corridors of mystery schools, and encoded in the alignments of temples that outlived their builders. Thoth never intended his departure to be permanent. He spoke of cycles, vast turning wheels of cosmic time, in which humanity would descend into forgetfulness, only to rise again toward remembrance. At the crest of such a cycle, when the density of ignorance can no longer hold, the scribe would return. To the uninitiated, return sounds like the arrival of a physical being stepping once more into history. To the adept, it means something deeper. The scribe's return is both personal and collective, a reawakening of the Thothic current within human consciousness itself. He may indeed incarnate in some form, but his truest arrival is the ignition of his frequency in those who are ready. Thoth's prophecy is precise in its conditions. The return occurs when three convergences align. Celestial convergence, a configuration of Sirius, Orion, and the Pleiades that mirrors the sky of Atlantis's final zenith. This alignment acts as a key, unlocking the dormant resonance codes embedded in Earth's energy grid. Consciousness, convergence. A critical mass of human beings awakening to the realization that reality is self-authored, and that authority outside the self is an illusion sustained by consent. Crisis convergence. A planetary threshold where the structures of control strain to maintain dominance, resorting to extremes that inadvertently reveal their own mechanisms. When these three meet, the gate of the scribe is said to open. This is not a literal door, but a frequency portal, an influx of the same cosmic intelligence Thoth carried when he descended to seed civilization. Those attuned to this frequency will experience rapid acceleration, dreams that instruct, synchronicities that multiply, and sudden recollections of skills and memories they never learned in this lifetime. In the Emerald Tablets, Thoth warns that this return is not without resistance. The same forces that opposed his work in Atlantis and Egypt will rise again, cloaking themselves in new forms. Technological control systems, engineered distractions, and fear-based narratives to keep the collective field anchored in low vibration. These forces cannot be fought on their own terms. They are dismantled only when their illusions are withdrawn from. As Thoth wrote, "To conquer the shadow, turn your face toward the sun. Let the darkness dissolve in its own absence." The suppressed knowledge here is that the return has already begun, not as a dramatic arrival heralded by thunder and light, but as a quiet seeding in the minds of thousands across the globe. Individuals from different walks of life, often with no connection to esotericism, are suddenly driven to study ancient texts, to meditate without being taught, to seek the stars in ways that feel instinctive. This is the Thothic current reactivating, bypassing the traditional priesthoods entirely. The true role of those who feel this current is not to wait passively for a savior figure, but to become the scribe themselves, to carry the light of understanding, to act as the living link between worlds, to transmute suppressed knowledge into embodied wisdom. In this way, the return is decentralized. No single throne to overthrow, no single person to silence. Only a network of awakened beings, each a point of light in the planetary grid. Thoth's ancient students prepared for this moment by embedding triggers in art, architecture, and language, symbols that would bypass conscious skepticism and awaken deep memory when encountered. The winged disc, the all-seeing eye, the ibis, the spiral, all carry vibrational signatures designed to stir recognition. These symbols have been misappropriated and distorted by the very forces they were meant to counter, yet their original codes remain intact beneath the surface. When one sees them with clear eyes, the signal still fires. The final task, according to the prophecy, is integration. It is not enough to awaken. One must act from the awakened state. This means aligning one's thoughts, emotions, and actions with the law of one, the recognition that all beings are facets of the same infinite source. The rituals, the devices, the teachings, they are tools, but the current itself is the true power. Without the ethical alignment, the tools corrupt. With it, they become extensions of the Creator's hand. And so, the return of the scribe is not a single day or event. It is a tide, rising now. It is the hum beneath the surface of reality, growing louder as more minds attune. It is the moment when the hidden libraries within human DNA begin to unlock, releasing not only the memory of who we were, but the blueprint for who we can become. We have walked the corridors of myth and fact, through Atlantis's radiant halls, along the silent chambers of the Great Pyramid, beneath the veils of priestly control, into the heart of rituals that bend reality itself. We have seen how every piece connects, how Thoth's descent seeded the blueprint, how the emerald tablets preserve the keys, how the Atlantean memory vault guards the totality, how the light body is the vessel, how suppression was the shadow, how alignment is the art, how the pyramid is the machine, and how the return is already underway. Now the strands converge. The story is not about a distant god, nor about a lost golden age. It is about you. The same force that moved through Thoth moves through any who choose to align with it. The same geometry that shaped the Merkaba is inscribed in your own energy field. The same resonance that hummed in the Great Pyramid vibrates in the core of your cells. The forbidden knowledge was never truly out of reach. It was hidden in the one place the controllers believed you would never look, within yourself. All the temples, all the alignments, all the rituals were external mirrors of an inner architecture. You are the scribe, the tablet, the resonance device, the vault. And so the choice is laid before you. Remain bound by the artificial rhythms, the borrowed beliefs, the limits handed down by those who fear your remembering, or step into the current and live as a creator, awake and unbound. The gates are open. The alignments are here. The current is flowing. The knowledge is now yours. What will you do with it?